What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? What's up, gang? How we doing today? Happy Thursday. Getting toward the end of the week. Kind of a casual, light six-gamer today. Don't know if anybody played the early slate. Looks like we were talking about it very briefly in Discord, and we landed on Brady Singer. Some of the guys landed on it, and I was just like, yeah, Singer looks pretty good. And he's out there with 8 innings of clean baseball right now. Pretty solid performance by him so far. So hopefully you guys had him and maybe some Bobby Witt with whatever else you played on the early slate. I only threw one lineup in. It was a Singer lineup just because we were talking about it. But hopefully somebody's doing well on the early. We've got a nice little casual six-gamer to wind our way through on the show today. My name's Terry McBride. The site is rotoscouts.com. Everything is free right now. We've got rankings for stacks. We've got rankings for pitchers. We've got the home run model, power index. We've got home run picks for every game. Overall home run picks. Full breakdown game by game in print for the people who like to read or just don't like to listen to me meander through it while talking to myself, to you guys. Sometimes it gets a little windy on those later games on those huge slates where I'm just like, oh, I'm laboring through those last few games. I can hear it in my voice. That's where it pays to have a second person on the shows. But we've got you guys in the chat help prop me up, which is great. And it looks like we got a good crew in here today. We've got Fanatic, Matt Tomlinson, Larry's here, Calvin's here, Mamba's here. Phil still says afternoon. It's a good afternoon back to you, Phil. Is Friday like a real work day anymore, or is it just like Thursday everybody punches out? That's it. Like Thursday always used to be a great go to happy hour kind of a day anyway. And then with like most people work from home and all those things, like does anybody care at all about Fridays? How many of you guys even work from like offices anymore these days? How many guys have to go into like offices or like whatever your jobs are and like actually have to go do something versus like how many of you are working from home these days? Always curious about the makeup of what everybody's doing. Salty Old Man says, great call on Dunning. Yeah, that one worked out pretty nicely, right? That was all the model. It just comes through the numbers, man. Sometimes I'm just reading it off. I like to make the arguments, justify whatever the model's seeing. But yeah, model picked that one up pretty nicely. So I was happy about that. I didn't get it in the right combination with anything, unfortunately. I had some competitive lineups that just died on the vine late. But hopefully somebody out there put it together with something good and took some money home. Larry's in the office twice a week. Kenneth Woodhouse is in 3 days a week, 2 at home. Half the time for Salty is at home. Fanatic's outdoors all day, every day. All right. See, that's a good way to live, I think. If I wasn't doing this, I think I would like to pivot into something where, like, I'm just working outdoors. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. I have no particular acumen for, like, working with my hands, physical labor, things like that. But maybe, like, some kind of, like, outdoor, not that I'm qualified, but, like, I don't know, taking, like, those surveys with that little thing that you put up before they do construction. I could do that. Somebody taught me how to use that thing. Something outside wouldn't be bad, though. I love getting out a little bit more. That said, I spend so much goddamn time just indoors in my apartment. It's ridiculous. Trey had back surgery, just settled my case, about to work part-time again and get into real estate. That's a good gig, especially these days. It's gone, I know the market's gone down a little bit, but should be a lot of movement still going on. I would imagine that a real estate agent would do pretty well. Larry says park ranger. Park ranger Terry. I could do that. I get behind that. Yeah. Move out to like Colorado, become a park ranger, live in a van at the foot of a mountain. Basically, like I'll be like Sly Stallone in Cliffhanger, minus the muscles jumping from mountain to mountain, saving lives, fighting John Lithgow, and so on and so forth. Anybody catch at the very end of the show? I mentioned in the chat after I signed off the show, so I don't know if it went through, but just turned out that yesterday, just as I was signing off, I noticed that Airplane was on one of the HBOs. So I mentioned it in the chat since we had talked about it yesterday or the day before. I watched the whole thing while I was building lineups. Such a funny movie. Trey drove for FedEx for a little bit. That was nice being on the road and by yourself. Yeah, I always thought that I would enjoy. I love long drives, road trips, stuff like that. That said, I haven't had a license in years. Just living in the city in Jersey City, Hoboken, and close to New York City, just like urban area. Don't need a car for anything really. Mass transit everywhere I need to go. But I used to love driving. Used to love long drives. So I always thought that like some sort of trucking kind of a thing would also be a good gig. My buddy does like logistics and dispatch. Not like on the mic dispatch. I don't think. Maybe it does. But he's like a logistics expert. He went from doing like options trading to being a logistics expert for a trucking company these days out in Cleveland. Jay Swales thought my Rays stacks were going to ship after the first inning. Franco done. Yeah, I thought that too. I had a lot of Tampa Bay at the end of the night, and I was like, "Ooh, that's off to a good start." I had a lot of both sides of that. I ended up just putting my thumb on the scales to get to a few extra shares of Cole, and that kind of worked out okay. It wasn't great for the money, but just didn't land in like the right combination of places. Larry says it was weird driving again after not driving for like 3 years living in NYC. Yeah, there really is. Like I said, it's Jersey City. It's not technically New York City, but same idea. Like there's no need to have a car. Everything I need in life is within a 5-minute walk of my house. And then like anywhere I'm going is just, I'm either going into the city or just taking mass transit down to like by my parents' house. So pretty easy. Yeah, Trey, a lot of money in logistics for sure. We'll see how that career goes alongside of a lot of other things with the emergence of AI and self-driving trucks once they finally get that perfected and out on the roads. It'll be interesting to see whether that logistics job is even needed anymore when you can have the machines optimizing the routes and doing the driving. Trey says, can't do an office either. Did cardiac rehab a little and hated the industry. Yeah, I'm done with offices. I'm hopefully done working for people. We'll see how that part of it goes. But yeah, I just don't like the idea of offices anymore and having to just deal with people and see them every day and talk about a bunch of nonsense that you don't care about. And I don't know. Just doesn't do it. Doesn't do it for me anymore. But anyway, I think it's an interesting slate. I think we can dig in. We've had a little bit of chit-chat here at the beginning of the show. We've got tons and tons of time today with only 6 games, so figure we could hang out for a little bit. But it's an interesting one to talk about. I think it's Francisco Lindor home run. DJ Stewart scored. I think it's an interesting slate in that it's really top-heavy in terms of pitching, with basically like 2 guys at the top of the board. We'll scroll over and we'll start the show off talking about this. I think we've got these 2 guys are somewhat obvious. Urias maybe a little bit less so, just given the dip in talent as compared to Ohtani, but they're clearly the top 2 options. I'm sure they're the top 2 projected guys on everybody's site. I'm sure they're the top 2 owned guys on every site. It makes total sense. And then you get kind of a thin board with, like, Keller can be good, but can be awful. Wu has been very good as a rookie, but has hit a bunch of bumps recently. Sonny Gray, we know, can be up and down. Javier's having a bad year for him. Schmidt is, a middling option. Tyone's a low-end option. And then it's just, like, unplayable down here. So I think it's a really thin pitching slate where you could either say, hey, I'm just going to go with the field. I'm going to book the Ohtani and Urias shares. I'll grab a handful of these, but not many. And I can ride with that, and I'll try and get different with bats and beat everybody with just differentiated stacks, differentiated bats, which is probably the most viable, most successful way to approach the slate. But I do think you're walking down the path with so many other people where all these guys are probably going to be owned, like FanDuel ownership in the single digits into the teens on DK with, both of these guys probably in half of all lineups. It just makes some sense in my mind to maybe undercut some Ohtani, undercut some Urias while still getting a bunch of them, and then focus in on just getting ahead of the field on 1 or 2 of these options while booking the rest of them at or about the field, or if you have a favorite, get way over on him. So I think there's some strong options through the middle here, but it's definitely a short slate, and 2 of these 5 guys are going to go bust. 1 of them will be okay, and 2 of them will probably have good games. So I think this is going to be where, like, this and bats is going to be where the slate's won and lost. Or Ohtani might just run off and hide with a monster fantasy game and just bury the entire slate. And, if you don't have him, you lose. But I want to get spread out on some of those pitching options. I think that's the way I'm going to target this slate while still having tons of Ohtani and tons of Urias. Don't get me wrong. Podegen Stoner says office bed. I agree. Commute sucks. Yeah. I had, for the beginning of when I moved up here, like I moved up here right after everybody got out of college when I'm going to say 22, 23. And for like 8 years, I was doing a reverse commute from the New York area down to by like Princeton, if you know New Jersey at all. I know Larry does. And it just made no sense to live here and drive down there every day and then back up here. But at least it was like kind of reverse commute, so people weren't necessarily going in my direction. So it was a little bit better, and I was driving. But then when I was living here and working in Manhattan, I was just taking the bus every day, and that would be like, 45 minutes to an hour on a bad day, 25 minutes on the best possible version of it. But even that was just so monotonous. You're packed in like this if you catch the bus and you don't get a seat. Like, it's just, I don't know. I like the opportunity to just like listen to a podcast or whatever, but I prefer that opportunity. Like, I listen to my podcast now while I take a stroll with Joker on a sunny day. Like, it's just a nicer way to go, not having to deal with that shit, not having to worry about monthly passes and whether or not you've remembered to buy it because it's the first of the month, and what do you have it's just, especially before the apps, you had to have the printed tickets and everything. Pain in the ass. Did not like commuting, even though my commute was easy. I mean, it's relative to what a lot of other people do, that's pretty easy. 20 some odd to 40 some odd minutes just from Jersey City, Hoboken into Manhattan. That's not that bad. A lot of other people have it worse. The ones that are lunatics are people who commute from out by like the Poconos in Pennsylvania into Manhattan, like 2.5 hours each way every day. Those people are nuts. They probably don't exist anymore. I can't imagine many people are still doing that with Zoom and everything that we have now. Greg Mink on subway tokens. Yup. God, another ridiculous one. But with the emergence of Metro cards, the subway token slugs went away. Those things that people would make on their own, the metal just slug that would work in the token machines, those went away. I remember those too. All right, let's dig in here. Astros and Yanks. It's an interesting matchup here. Both of these guys are in that mid-board. Schmidt more toward the bottom of the mid-board. I think Javier's got the higher ceiling overall, but he's been really down this year compared to where he's been in years past. He's got an effective enough 4.33 ERA this season, but a 5.01 xFIP, just a 22.9% strikeout rate. That's way down. 33.2% last year, 30.7% the year before. That's in 148 and 2/3 innings and 25 starts last year. 101 and a third, 9 starts, hybrid relief role for them 2 years ago when he was that dominant arm that came in out of the pen, had that great run in the playoffs. He was very, very good both of these 2 seasons. Limited premium contact, 33.3% hard hits, 2.91% home runs last year. Those are both up, 3.34% home runs, 37.4% hard hits. Barrels are up to 10.2%. But the biggest concern, I think, is just the dip in strikeouts, dip in swinging strikes. CSW obviously goes down along with the dip in swinging strikes. So it's just, concerning that he's pitching differently. He's lost 1.5 miles or so of miles per hour on his fastball, lost spin and velocity on his slider. Those are his 2 primary pitches. He throws them 90% of the time, those 2 pitches. So with a dip in quality on both pitches, some of this concern is actually pretty real. The thing that he's got working in his favor is that he's facing like a 2.5-man lineup. This terrible version of the Yankees lineup with no Anthony Rizzo in it now. He went to the IL apparently. I saw somebody mention that in the chat before. Had not seen that, but I did know he wasn't in the lineup today. So it's maybe a little better than 2.5 players. Like Aaron Judge is probably 2.5 players on his own. So there's Judge, Torres, Stanton. That's your 3 quality major leaguers. And then I do think that like Bowers and McKinney, just on the virtue of being lefties who can hit home runs, can maybe work their way into some lineups. They're very, very cheap. They're easy enough to get to in the outfield for the Yanks. So I think you can definitely grab shares of the top 5 here. IKF is bad. Bader is wildly inconsistent. So is Volpe. They both have a little bit of pop. They both have stolen base upside. Volpe hit his 14th home run, 20 stolen bases. He's got 400 plate appearances on the season, 214, 288, 383, 86 WRC plus. So he's 14% worse than average creating runs. He strikes out too much at 28.5%. He doesn't get on base. He doesn't hit for average, but he does hit the infrequent home runs. So there's that. They popped up. I guess Stanton outpaced him with his home run later in the game, but Volpe's home run I think came first, and Michael Kay started going. And with that, Anthony Volpe's got the same number of RBIs this season as Giancarlo Stanton, as if it was a good thing. And then there was a awkward pause on the broadcast, and then it was like, but that of course does come in 400 plate appearances versus Stanton's 235. You clean that up real quick. It's like, yeah. Knowing how that feels sometimes to just get off on starting to say something, though, I get it. But yeah, that was kind of a bad call by Michael Kay. Volpe's been all right, but I expected more, I think, from the shortstop in terms of hitting, hit tool, hit tool, on base skills. I was expecting more there, and I would have taken a trade-off of if he had 8 home runs right now with 25 stolen bases and a 300 plus on base even, I'd be happy with it. I just want more on base. I want more hits. The power's great, but we just need him to get, if he was hitting for this kind of power, no average, and like a 325, 340 on base percentage, that would be fine. I don't care about the batting average as much as just getting himself to first base. The speed's irrelevant when he can't get on first base. Astros side of things, I was actually kind of surprised that Jordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker are where they are. They're both decent home run ratings here going up against Clark Schmidt. But I was thinking they would, when I was putting it together this morning, I was thinking they would pop up with a plus, 10 plus marks against the guy with a 3.53% home run rate allowed, 8.8% barrels, 43.4% hard hits, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo allowed. I was thinking those two big-time lefty power hitters in Yankee Stadium would be a little bit more obvious, more juicy in the home run model here than that. I'm going to go to them, I think, quite a bit, kind of like they are projected that way. I just think it's a really good spot for those two hitters. They have massive power from the left side of the plate. They're joined by Jose Altuve at the top of the lineup, Jeremy Pena, Alex Bregman, Abreu later in the lineup, but Chas McCormick is a very good option down in the bottom of the lineup there. So I think I'm going to be using a fair amount of Astros and less Clark Schmidt than most of the rest of that mid-range. He's probably my least favorite option out of that group. 7,275 is perfectly fine. He's got a 22% strikeout rate, let's call it, a 4.39 ERA, a 4.41 xFIP, serviceable numbers for runs, like not great, but serviceable. He doesn't really pitch that deep into ball games in a lot of cases. I put it in the article. He went, I think I put it in the article. No, I just said he is rarely allowed to complete the 6th inning, which is true. He's got a lot of games where it's like, 5 2/3, 5 innings. Sometimes he gets through 6. I don't know that he's pitched in the 7th all year. But, yeah, the depth is a little bit questionable. And I just think with the Astros kind of in full form now, with Altuve back, with Alvarez back, all the quality that they've got up and down that lineup, even from some of the guys who have underperformed this year, I think there are reasons to consider Schmidt the lowest end of that mid-range group. Yeah, has not pitched beyond the 6th inning this year. He's completed the 6th inning 1, 2, 3 times in 21 outings. Completed the 5th inning a lot of times, or a fair amount of times. He's got a lot of starts with just like 4 2/3 in here as well, though. Boone's got a pretty quick hook with him, so reason to be concerned about the overall depth, the overall quality available with Schmidt, but he's good enough for some value darts. Like at those prices, at this projection on this thin slate, he is definitely on the board. More on the board on the DK slate. Javier's my preferred option between the two starters. I do think he's got upside. I kind of forgot to actually focus on him. I went right into talking about some of the Yankees bats there, but I do think there's reason to go to Javier. 8,600, 9,200 for his ceiling. If you get him on a good night against the inept Yankees, there is definitely upside there beyond this projection. I think the projection is appropriate around the prices, fairly appropriate. Arguably maybe a little bit high for the underperformance this year on the FanDuel slate, but on such a short slate with a couple really high priced options, like it makes sense to have him there. So I think it's appropriate. On the Yanks side, like I said, it's the 3 bats right here, and then really just these 2 as bolt-ons, and then some shares of these guys as bolt-ons. Rortvet's here for defense and catcher. IKF is here for some reason. He's been okay. Like he 259, 325, 373, 4% worse than average, 5 home runs, 9 steals. If that's your thing for 2,300, a light hitter. I've never really liked him. 1.2% barrels, 29.8% hard hits last year, 3.8%, 36.1% this year. They got him because he led the league in singles before they acquired him a couple of years ago. And because they acquired him, that's why they had to get stuck with Josh Donaldson. Anyway, so yeah, Astros, definite yes. Yankees, some. They always project okay with given the upside of Judge and Stanton. So, some Yankees, especially against the struggling version of Javier, I think there is some upside for them. But it's a weak version of the lineup. And then some Schmidt, kind of a weak version of him. So I would say Astros bats, Javier, Yankees bats, Schmidt. Shannon Lambert's in the chat. 8 game. What's going on, 8 game? Yo. Podegen Stoner. PoDJ Sunner says Hauser, Moose, Betts, Cruz, Rosario, Moniak, Friedel, Fraley, Votto. Pray for my DFS baseball soul. I like most of that outside of the Hauser part. Everybody else in there I don't really have any issues with / think is pretty good. If you can get away from that Hauser option, don't really like that part. Don't think there's much upside here. You can see it on the board right now. 5,200, 7,400. Look, I get it for the price on DK. I do think you could throw some darts at it for sure. He is super, super cheap. But I have the Reds top of the board for overall collective projections. The Brewers are excuse me, I'm talking about the wrong opponent. He's facing the Pirates. I have the Pirates leading up near the top of the board. They ranked fourth overall for fantasy point projections. They ranked third for value and first on DK for value. They were not ranking out well for home runs because that's what Hauser does well. He takes power away. 2.68% home runs this year, 10.1 degree launch angle, 6.8% barrels. Last year, 1.76% home runs, 5.6% barrels, was better at limiting home runs last year. Year before, 2% home runs, 5% barrels. So he's given up a few more barrels in the 67 innings this year, 12 starts. But I just don't see tons and tons of strikeout upside. I like the Pirates lineup, particularly if they do get Cabrian Hayes back. He's a underperformer in terms of the bat, but I like his bat in that leadoff spot if that's where they put him, or if he's hitting like fifth or somewhere around there, I think he's perfectly fine. 46.8% hard hits for 3,500, 2,700. Only was slashing 248, 285, 388 with a 79 WRC plus, 5 homers, 9 steals, and 312 plate appearances before he went out. But I do think it's a capable major league hitter to add to the top of that lineup, to go in with a few guys that I like that are like, veteran guys, plus Jack Suwinski and his power, and then all those rookies who I think are pretty cheap, pretty capable young players. So I'm happy to go to the Pirates side of it, and I don't love the upside for Hauser here. It's just a low-end play in terms of the strikeout ceiling. 15.2% in 102 and two-thirds last year, 17.5% 2 years ago, 17.4% this year. Pirates, 29.1% strikeout rate for this version of the lineup, but you got to keep in mind that includes all of these extraordinarily small samples, 44, 17, 30, and 17 plate appearances, and nothing relevant here. The top of the lineup, all the veterans are basically good at avoiding strikeouts. Henry Davis has a bigger plate appearance sample of 149, and he's been pretty decent at avoiding strikeouts. Only really Suwinski is a strikeout target. The rookies could be strikeout targets, but we just don't really know yet. So I think it's limited in terms of Hauser's ability to go get those strikeouts. He might keep the Pirates down. There's obviously not a ton of home run upside here, but I think there's a little bit of run creation potential against with all the contact that's going to be available, and they're projecting fairly well for value. So I'm going to have the Pirates side of that equation. On the Brewers side, going up against Mitch Keller, it's an interesting spot for Keller. He's like the third man in at the top of the board, has a good projection, falls well short of Urias and Ohtani. 9,100, 10-2. He's priced like a kind of premium option on the FanDuel slate, little less so on DK. He's obviously more gettable over there. 133 and two-thirds, 25.7% strikeouts, 3.01% home run rate, though, 9.4% barrels, but only 32.8% hard hits, so the contact profile is a little weird. 3.97 ERA, a 3.69 xFIP, those are still pretty good. 1.21 whip is a little high, particularly for a guy with a 7.1% walk rate, which is still pretty strong. It's just a weird, frustrating Mitch Keller-esque kind of a season. He started out really, really well, kind of came back to earth. He's given up 6 home runs in his last 3 starts, struck out 8 and 5 and two-thirds against the Phillies in his most recent start, gave up 1 home run in that game, struck out 7 against the Angels in a 5-inning start, but allowed 3 of those home runs. It's Mitch Keller. It could really honestly go either way. I will definitely have some. My hope is that I get him at fairly lower ownership than it should be. I won't even say low because I expect people to go to him. But at 10-2 on FanDuel, I hope that this keeps his ownership lower than it should be. And then I think probably you would just go along field level ownership, maybe at 91 on DK. That's a reasonable enough price for the inconsistency, for the lower end version of Keller that you might get here. I do think the Brewers are fairly targetable here, though. Like, they're not an overly good team. They rank 11th out of 12 by fantasy point projections and 11th for power in the model today. They have a 94 WRC plus that ranks 24th against right-handed pitching overall, a 152 WRC plus, just a 21.6% strikeout rate, but that's somewhat gettable for a guy who is good at getting strikeouts on the right night. So it's not like it's an intimidating lineup on the other side for the Brewers. I do think you can take some shares against Keller, especially if you go over the top with Keller shares. It probably makes sense to grab some hedge stacks of Brewers. Let me see if we got the lineup in. Oh, it looks like it just dropped. It is, I think, exactly this lineup. Pirates still not in. So if we're going to Brewers, yeah, it's basically the same lineup that was in there. Christian Yelich is a star off the top. I think you can even one-off Christian Yelich in spots if you want to. 5,600, 3,600. Very high-end player. 52.8% hard hits. 286, 369, 475. 16 homers, 22 steals, 129 WRC+. A little bit of everything from Christian Yelich. He's an excellent option for a fair price on both sides. It's not like that's a high price for his quality. Willson Contreras, we've talked about a lot, the better hitter of the two brothers this year. 116 WRC plus, 11 homers on the season, a decent triple slash, and hits second every day, which is valuable for a catcher. Just adds that extra potential plate appearance. 48.1% hard hits, only strikes out 19.6% of the time. Carlos Santana, former Pirate, looking for revenge against Mitch Keller. Who knows if they were friends or not? Who knows if they got along? Who knows if that matters, or is it all something to care about? Maybe he's sad that he's not on the Pirates anymore. Who knows? But Carlos Santana, 3,800, 3,300. Definitely an option. 13 home runs on the season, 95 WRC plus, 176 ISO. Hasn't been great, but does have capable power from both sides of the plate for a cheap price at first base. If you're going to Brewers, you definitely want to include Santana. Willie Adames is really flawed, but does have major power at shortstop, 17 home runs on the season. Sal Fraley, a little bit of pop in his bat, more hit tool focused overall over the long term, I think. 3,900, 3,000, affordable outfield rookie. Marcana, affordable outfield veteran. First base eligible on the FanDuel slate as well at 2,600, gives you an alternative to Carlos Santana in stacks. So that's kind of interesting there. He hasn't been great this year, but he's been pretty good in years past. Only 6 home runs in 310 this year. Kind of played his way out of New York. 13 homers on the board in 542 last year. 17 homers in 625 the year before. Positive WRC plus marks both of those years. Was not all that great in Queens this year. But getting a shot with the Brewers at a cheap price toward the bottom of the lineup, I think he's a playable option. I like him better than Andrew Monasterio or Bryce Turang, but I do think Joey Wiemer is interesting. Wiemer, I got to get that right. Joey Wiemer, 350 plate appearances, good for counting stats, 13 homers, 11 steals, 2,500, 2,600 in the outfield. Kind of a plug-in option. You can use him as a wraparound play in stacks of Brewers. Not somebody to go out of your way for, or build Brewer stacks just so you can get to him, or put in into too many lineups as a one-off. But he's a capable enough guy for counting stats that nobody really uses all that much. So I think there's plenty of reason to go to him at the bottom of the lineup. It's like, I probably like him better than, let's say everybody from Willie Adames down. So it would probably be, if I was building one stack of Brewers, I would probably do like a 9 through 4 on DK. I think that would be the approach. But they're just okay. They're, like I said, low ranked, 11th ranked out of 12 teams in terms of the fantasy point projections, 11th out of 12 teams for home run upside. So you got to get Mitch Keller on the wrong day for Mitch Keller. So this one was, how did I do it in the article? Yeah, because they ranked fairly well. All right, that makes sense. Good job, Tara. Pirates bat stacks. Mitch Keller. A few stacks of Brewers are okay. No real interest in Adrian Hauser for me, but I do get it at 5,200 on DK. If you want to throw some darts at the Pirates, at least it's not a very high-end team to throw darts at. I didn't talk through the Pirates lineup, did I? So Brian Hayes, I mentioned off the top, adding his bat to that lineup is pretty valuable for 3,500, 2,700 at third base. He's underperformed what he should be. Like I said, the hard hit rate indicates to me both of these seasons that he should be a little bit better of a hitter than he's been. Hasn't hit for much power, 7 home runs last year. Below average WRC plus, same thing the year before. It's maybe a stretch to say that he's a good major league hitter, but he's a guy that I think has more talent than we've seen so far, or more ability to create output than we've seen so far. Brian Reynolds is an underperforming star, but he's cheap, 4,500, 3,400 for his talent. Andrew McCutchen, about what he is at this point, 10 home runs, 10 steals, excellent on-base percentage on the back of a very strong walk rate. Jack Suwinski, major power hitter, 21 home runs, a 268 ISO, strikes out 33% of the time, but walks 14%, gets on at a 340 clip, creates runs 23% better than average. So Suwinski's got value in the middle of the lineup. He's not like one of these all or nothing power hitters. He does have value getting on base. He's a 3 true outcomes kind of a guy. Home run, walk, or a strikeout are those outcomes for people who don't know that term, and that's very close to who he is here, Joey Gallo type of a hitter, but major significant power bat that does stay involved when he's not hitting home runs by getting himself to first base. Henry Davis, the most experienced of the rookies, he's a very playable part, 4 home runs, 3 steals, and 149, below average WRC plus, but in that few plate appearances, we care more about the fact that he has been able to hit home runs at the major league level, that he has stolen a few bases, that he does have a 9.2% barrel rate, 44.9% hard hits, over 149 major league plate appearances. I don't really care that the WRC plus is below average for him in that sample. I just care about the other stuff being intact, the ability to put bat on ball and so on. Andy Rodriguez, only 44 plate appearances. He's got a home run on the board. Similar in terms of it's a much smaller sample, but 12% barrels, 52% hard hits, giving us something to believe in for the premium catcher prospect. Alfonso Rivas in the projected lineup, 17 plate appearances for him, 77 WRC plus. Last year, 287 plate appearances, 235, 322, 307, 82 WRC plus. So more experienced on the whole, but pretty low end in terms of Rivas. I prefer Liberatore. 3 home runs and 30 plate appearances already for him. We got one from him the other day as the only good part of my Pirate stack on Tuesday in the one lineup that I built for that slate. But again, 12.5% barrels, 18.8% hard hits is not good at all, but 12.5% barrels is interesting in his 30 plate appearances. Just put bat on ball when you're a power prospect when you first come up. I'm happy enough to get to that. Very cheap at second base or shortstop for $2,600. Shortstop only on FanDuel. And then Alika Williams down the bottom of the lineup, 2,100, 2,000 dead minimum. Mix and match play. Kind of a lower end in terms of the prospect rating. So it was Pirates bats, Mitch Keller, Brewers bats, and then if you want Adrian Hauser for a value dart on DK, take him. I wouldn't play Adrian Hauser at 7,400 on FanDuel. The pit lineup's out. Right as I talk through it. Still not up on Labs. Is anybody weird in it or not in it? Does it hew kind of closely to what I just talked about, or is it completely different? Poe DJ Stoner says Suwinski is great. Yeah, I like Suwinski a lot. Sounds like Poe DJ Stoner had a good day on Jock Market today. I liked Jock Market when it first came out, when we were doing promos for it over on Stochastic, and I actually got into playing it a little bit. I was enjoying it a lot for NBA. It's just an interesting way to play. It was until you... Chuck Deuce says it was exactly what we said it was. All right, good. Labs got it right. Excellent. Oh, Stephen Leibowitz dropped it there, too. Cool. Appreciate it, bud. Yeah, it's Pojijan. It's I've seen you drop some of the screenshots in Discord, and it just kind of reminded me that they exist, and I was like, I got to get into them for baseball. I feel like I could do some damage with for baseball over there. Yeah, it does look like a little bit different order if that's the one that Stephen Leibowitz posted there with Rivas, Reynolds, McCutch, Suwinski, Davis, Hayes. So Hayes is perfectly fine moving him down. Might actually be a better spot in the lineup for him given the lack of actual output, but the idea of some lurking power in that bat, the ability to drive the ball in that bat, it actually does make more sense to hit him down lineup a little bit rather than up at the top. All right, Joker, we're not going to make a habit out of this. I happened to go to the deli before, and I bought these little rawhide chips, and I gave him one already, and he was just enjoying it out in the other room, and he just came in looking for another one. But I figured these are, like, super thin. Like, this is just like a cracker. Monty Python bit. It's just a wafer. The big fat guy. When they make him eat it, then he explodes. Great bit. So I don't want to make a habit out of this, pal, but I want you to shut up. So here. I don't think 2 of those is more than like one of those little bones where it's the same thing all just twisted up. So he's probably okay with 2 of them. Plus he's a big fat ass anyway. He's a fat old man. We're not going to change now. He's going to be 11 at the beginning of the year. Deli. More of a bodega than a deli. Let's see if the... here we go. We'll hop back real quick. We'll look at So yeah, Rivas is in the leadoff role. Like I said, he wasn't much of anything last year. 287 plate appearances, a fair sample. Not a huge sample, but a fair sample. 235, 322, 307, 82 WRC plus, 3 homers, 6 steals. Not exactly a ideal leadoff man. We can take a look at him in the Alfonso. There he is. Alfonso Soriano's name came up. What a player he was. So Rivas is 26. He's been around. Cup of coffee with the Cubbies in 21. 49 plate appearances. The 287 last year was also with the Cubbies. Not a prospect of any kind, really. Okay grades in terms of like traditional scouting, based on the scouting report that's up on Fangraphs. But nothing to really write home about in the minors. Okay walk rates, mediocre strikeout rates, okay batting average type guy. But no real, like, he's a hit but no speed, no power type, it seems like. He peaked at 9 home runs, 8 stolen bases, and 260 plate appearances in AAA this year. Prior to that, 8 home runs and 2 stolen bases in high A for Oakland in 2019. And this year's AAA numbers come playing at age 26 in AAA. So, I mean, it's, you got to take it with a bit of a grain of salt. Like, he's obviously advanced for that level. So, yeah, I mean, if you're building Pirate stacks, he's obviously a part of it because he's in that leadoff role. He correlates with all these guys now. If he gets on base, you want to have him as part of it. But he's not a high priority option. I don't even know. It doesn't look like he's on the DK slate. He's not coming up over there anyway. Maybe they added him. I'm not sure. 25 hundo for first base on FanDuel. But not a high-end guy. Reynolds, McCutch, Sawinski, Henry Davis, Brian Hayes. So this part of the lineup just straight down. Endy and Lever are in there as well. And then, like I said, Alika Williams, it's basically both ends. 1 and 9 are not great. They're cheap, so you can bolt them in if you need them, but they're not great. Priority 2 through 8. Twins and the Cards. Sonny Gray's on the board for sure for pitching. Let's see. We got the Twins lineup in. Grab that. So I think Sonny Gray, 9,400, 10-1. Kind of falls into that same bucket of, like, projects in that next tier down range, but a serviceable veteran with a clear ceiling. He's got a tough matchup against the Cards, but he's pitched fairly well all season. 3.22 ERA, a 3.83 xFIP, only a 0.81% home run rate. He's given up like 3 home runs all year, oddly. There's nothing overly predictive about that, but he has been good this year, whatever he's doing, at missing barrels, keeping the ball in the yard, keeping a lot of hits down with only a 9.5 degree launch angle. So it's been sustained for him throughout the course of this year anyway, inducing a decent swinging strike rate, 23.3% strikeouts. So I think there's definite upside for Sonny Gray, but I will take a few hedge stacks of Cards, especially if I get carried away with Gray shares. Like, he falls into that group of pitchers that I'll have a decent amount of and try and probably be ahead of the field if the field is carried away on Ohtani and Urias shares. I'll probably get a little bit over-invested in some Sonny Gray, but at the same time, I will take some hedge positions with the Cards. Although I'm now noticing that there's no Nolan Arenado in the Cards lineup, so that definitely takes them down a peg and gives Sonny Gray a little bit of a bump in my mind. If you're going to Cards lineup, Lars Nootbaar in that leadoff spot, like him quite a bit. We'll see him there a lot on the strong side of the platoon role anyway. Lefty, 4,400, 3,500, 11 homers, 7 steals in 335 plate appearances. Good mid-range power, good stolen base upside. Puts the ball in play a ton, draws a fair amount of walks. 14.3% walks, only 20.6% strikeouts. 380 on base percentage over that fair size sample right now. 129 WRC plus, so 29% better than average creating runs. Provides really strong correlation with Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Gorman, who both have massive power at the plate. 18 homers, 22 homers for those two. Gorman leads the way in the home run model, the lefty, but Goldschmidt's right there. I mean, that's can't tell me that Goldschmidt can't be the fourth guy this year or whatever to homer against Sonny Gray. Jordan Walker gets the bump up to the cleanup role, which is interesting. 2,800, 2,900, very cheap for a cleanup hitter in this lineup now behind these 3 guys. I like that spot a lot. I wrote about him today, just in doing the review, the game by game. He came into the season as like a top end rookie. Like people were excited about him, people were drafting him in redraft leagues, and he got out to a slow start. They sent him back down. He was gone for a little while. He came back. He's been very, very good, and people aren't really talking that much about him. So I think he maybe slips under the radar here. 2,800, 2,900 for a kid who's hitting 270, 333, 436, 113 WRC plus, 10 homers, 5 steals, and only 264 plate appearances, a 48.6% hard hit rate with only 22.7% strikeouts. So he's putting bat on ball very frequently and very well. I think Jordan Walker's super interesting in that cleanup role now for a cheap price. It's not a great matchup going up against Sonny Gray for him. Young kid going up against Sonny Gray too. There's always that aspect of it, but we don't really have a way to quantify the young inexperienced nature of it outside of what the numbers tell us, and the numbers are fairly good for him here. So I like the spot for Walker. Burleson, Edman, Nizer, Carlson, Motter. Kind of a flawed bottom five for the Cards. Kind of supports upside for Sonny Gray, I think. I do like Tommy Edman in the overall. In a vacuum, I like Tommy Edman. But over the course of this season, 13% worse than average in 314 plate appearances, creating runs. That's what he's out there for, is run creation. He has like mid-range power, good speed. Typically hits leadoff or third, leadoff or the bottom of the lineup. Today he slots in sixth in a weird positioning. He's got multi-position eligibility, 3,300, 2,800. I do think if you're building card stacks, Tommy Edman's probably my favorite of those bottom guys from Burleson down. But he's not been great this year. Burleson's cheap. Burleson's got a little bit of pop from the left side of the plate, 7 home runs. Only a 166 ISO, 91 WRC+. plus. Neisner's a backup catcher. Carlson, 2,300, 2,600, another guy who's cheap with the idea of like mid-range power, but kind of an underperformer. Motter, not really an option. He's dead minimum price with multi-position, so he does make things work. He's like a lever to help you get to a combination of like the top 4. Right? If adding him for the dead minimum at, let's say, third base allows you to play these 4 guys in conjunction with some great pitching combination, then so be it. Taylor Motter can provide enough value to do that. But other than that, he's not really an option. Matthew Liberatore, also not really a premium option in this spot. I think the Twins, less trappy tonight than they were yesterday, despite a 1.27% home run rate for Liberatore this season. I don't think there's much threat of him like being an actual guy who limits home runs in the long term. Overall, 13.9% strikeout rate in his 8 starts, 32 innings, so there's no real upside for strikeouts. 6.75 ERA, 5.79 xFIP, 10.1% walk rate. He has not shown much of anything at the major league level yet. So 5,600, 6,200. I think I'm just kind of out on Liberatore, and I think I want to go to some twin stacks. They're kind of a strong value option. FanDuel-wise, they've got 3 multi-position guys in the lineup. DK, they've got 3 two-position guys in the lineup. So I think there's a lot of options. There's a lot of different ways to put this lineup together. They do not have Byron Buxton in the lineup, which downgrades them again. But they do have like Kyle Farmer's in there, the sneaky power from him, very cheap prices. Solano's got a capable bat, decent batting average, low end for power, but does create runs, does get on base, does get involved. Only 2,700, 2,400 on FanDuel with 3 positions. Jorge Polanco, major power, star caliber power when he's healthy. 4,400, 3,000 is cheap for him. Edward Julian back in the lineup, 3,600, 3,200 at second base. Down lineup hitting 5th against the lefty. I am not worried about lefty-lefty with Liberatore here on the mound. So I think Edward Julian's very much in play. Carlos Correa's in play from the top of the lineup. He's just discounted for all his struggles this year. So as a value option, if nothing else, I do think the Twins are very much in play. And like Jeffers has good power from the bottom of the lineup. Willie Castro's got good speed, 26 steals on the season, 98 WRC plus, 245, 331, 367. It's not like he's great, but he only costs 2,600, 2,700. And he's got some good reliable counting stats. Michael A., the infrequent power, some stolen base upside, 14%, but worse than average, over 277 plate appearances. Again, not great, but something on the bone, some meat on the bone there. 6 homers for Matt Wallner, kind of realistic power output, 2,400, 3,000. Don't know if he continues it, but he's been mashing so far, hidden at the bottom of the lineup here for the Twins. So I think there's a lot of reasons and a lot of different good ways to put this lineup together, kind of from 1 through 9, even without one of their stars. And Buxton's kind of underperformed on the season anyway. He had by far the most power in the lineup, most power on the team. Joey Gallo not in the lineup, but I don't really mind this version of the Twins lineup. And if people aren't going to it like crazy, I think it's a decent spot at, if nothing else, for value. They're not great. They do strike out a ton, 26.9% strikeout rate on the season. But again, Liberatore's got a 13% this year. Call it 14. We'll give him the extra tenth of a point there. Last year, 17.4. Maybe he's got a little upside to, slightly under 1-5, but there's not much there. I'm not really worried about it. So I'll take my shots with the Twins today, where I was off them yesterday. I think I'm on them today. I like the flexibility. I like the value. So it's probably Sonny Gray first. Sonny Gray, Twin stacks, cards, bats in like small doses. Kind of a hedge position against some Sonny Gray shares, or maybe some... Can you go breathe somewhere else? What's with this loud breathing now? You got 2 cookies. Go lie down. You jerk. Now he's just getting greedy. I don't know if that panting is coming through on the over the microphone. Why don't you go get a sip of water, pal? So yeah, cards kind of only as a hedge position, primarily as a hedge position against Sonny Gray shares, and then at least as a mix-in option across 150 lineups. If you get to them in 10, 15 stacks, it's totally fine. Top end is greatly preferred there, though. Kind of falls off around these bottom 3 hitters, but like I said, Mater at least is usable because he's min-priced on both sites. 3 games to go. See what's going on in the chat. Shannon says the Twins suck and no Buxton. Chuck says second highest owned team on the slate. No shit. Minnesota? Huh. All right. Interesting. As high owned as the Cubs. That's interesting. Dakota Hudson did them in last night. Looked like an ace. Yeah. Hey, look, we talked about his potential to limit their home run upside, which is the one thing he does well when he's on. Last I checked, I was hanging out and having a bunch of beers and stuff last night. So the last I remember looking, he was having a good game. I don't remember what his final score was, but yeah, I assume it worked out. Podigen says, "Damn, killing my buzz." What did I do? 420 snacks is Podigen Stoner's promo code for Jock Market. If you guys want to go support his Cannabis Monsters and DFS Low Stakes GPP edition, and he said in the chat. Go support Podigen Stoner with promo code 420 snacks over on our pals Jock Market. Maybe we can get ourselves a sponsorship. All right. So they're really close to the Cubbies. All right. I mean, if they're going to be that crazy owned, then I'm going to get so much value out of pitching today anyway that I don't really need to go to stacks just because they have value. So I'll have some, but that might temper my interest in the Twins. I think they still do look good. They ranked 6th on the board for projection and 6th for home run upside, 2nd for FanDuel value, 1st for DK value. But that was done when Buxton was in the projected version of the lineup. So maybe they come down a little bit in those rankings. But like mid board, relatively usable. But if they're crazy highly owned, I do understand getting away from it, and I think that would make a lot of sense. But they're definitely like an entry point into being able to combine Shohei Ohtani, Julio Urias, and X, along with Twins. So that's probably what's taken them up to very high-end ownership. So let's roll on. We've got Cubbies and the Reds. Not to bury the lead, but we're getting a ton of offense out of this spot, I think. I've got the Reds up top, 2nd for home runs, 1st for projections. Cubbies 3rd in both categories. Reds showing a little bit more value, with some lower priced in terms of the points per dollar guys, but the highest price on the board for Elly De La Cruz, who's obviously kind of underperformed this price, but I get why he's at that price because his talent is that price. Just the statistics that he's produced so far are slightly below that level of output, but he's got an everyday ceiling of, as high as most players in the league, any star in the league. So 6,100, 3,700. 3,700 is a very fair price for him on FanDuel. DK keeping him at superstar pricing at 61. I totally get it. It is just easy to get to him anyway with all these $4,000 options over here, some $3,000 options over here. There's plenty of ways to get to the high-end version of the Reds. Joey Votto is my overall home run pick for the day, 11.63 on kind of a light day for home run upside. We haven't seen a lot of monster numbers in the home run model, so Joey was the pick. 11 on the board in only 134 plate appearances, 17.7% barrels, 46.8% hard hits. Monster power output. He's kind of in that three true outcome zone now as well. 27.6% strikeouts, 10.4% walks, only 216, 321, 534. If anybody remembers Joey Votto from like way back, the guy was an average and on base machine and had good power, and he's turned himself more into a power focused hitter these days at the back end of his career, but just a monster power bat. 4,300, 3,100 going up against Jameson Taillon in this environment. I think there's major upside for power for Joey today. Christian Encarnacion Strand, Will Benson, both very playable late in the lineup for the Reds. Encarnacion Strand is a star caliber talent. We'll see if he gets there. There's no guarantee, but he has got an elite potential bat. 260, 302, 360 so far, 74 WRC plus, only 100 ISO, 1 home run in his 53 plate appearances. I expect a lot more. 48.6% hard hits. I promise these numbers are going up. Like I said the other day, I promise this is going up. In the middle of the lineup, Will Benson, not to leave him out, 32, 3,000, 11.2% barrels for him, 274, 377, 518, 35% better than average, 7 homers, 10 steals. He's been really, really good. Kind of sneaky, not somebody that is the first guy off the top. Like, this is ownership from, I guess, yesterday's slate, 1.37% per Graphs ownership yesterday, McLean, with teammates that were in the 20s and 30s. That's too good a player to leave on the board that often. Too cheap. So I like Will Benson from the bottom here. And then, obviously, like I said, Ellie at the top. But TJ Friedel's been really good. 8 homers, 17 steals. He's more the average in steals guy than he is this 8-homer guy. 2% barrels, 26.2% hard hits. Not really a power hitter. Those 8 home runs are a little bit of an outlier. But a good run creator, a good hitter for average, good at getting to first base and maybe stealing a base, scoring some runs and correlating with Matt McLean, with Jake Fraley, with Spencer Steer. All 3 of these guys have been really good this year. McLean is appropriately high priced. You get multi-position on him and Ellie with nice flexibility in the infield. Add Spencer Steer to that multi-position as well. 4,534 is pretty cheap for him. 5.6% barrels, 37.7% hard hits. So maybe we take some of the 16 home runs with a grain of salt, but he's still been good. 272, 357 on base, 463 slug, 190 ISO, 16% better than average creating runs. I'll ignore the limited contact profile for now and hope that it's just one of those guys who can hit home runs despite not frequently barreling the ball. Just one of those guys that when he does, it becomes a home run most of those times. 19.6% strikeout rate too. Doesn't swing and miss all that much. Jake Fraley also a low strikeout rate. Good power output. Good stolen base output. Similar profile. Like maybe Steer is just Spencer Steer. That's basically what the exact guy I'm talking about is Jake Fraley. He's very low contact profile both of the last 2 years, but manages to hit home runs. So if Steer can give you that kind of output, you take it. So I think Reds, 1 through 8, plus if you're on DK, Luke Maley for 2,200. That's a good enough bolt on at catcher. 4 home runs in 120 plate appearances, a 188 ISO, 12.3% barrel rate. Good enough. So he plays. So they're good 1 through 9 lineup. I like the Reds a lot. They were sitting 4.47 run implied total versus on the other side a 5.64. Massive upside for the Cubbies again. They've been scoring at will. They've been ludicrously good over the last couple of weeks. Their lineup is in, so let me grab it. I think it's what we've got in there, basically. I mean, they obviously had the 20-run day the other day. Lots of power. Excellent on base skills. I feel like we were a little bit ahead of the curve. Hopefully we capitalized out there on some of the Cubbies on base skills and their ability to sequence and create runs. And now they're hitting for some power, too. The power's come roaring back a little bit. Chris Morel, dynamite power option, 17 homers on the season. Apparently, I didn't fact check this, but apparently, according to somebody on Twitter who is a reliable handle, he's hit a home run from every position in the batting order, which is pretty cool. Triple position eligible on the FanDuel slate. 4,100 is a big ticket to pay for him, but he gives you 3 positions, a lot of flexibility, and he slots in with all these different guys who help average down that price. So I'm not that concerned about the price when everybody else but Bellinger is in the low 3s, high 2s. Same story on DK. A little bit higher price for like Swanson in there. A little bit higher for Nico over there. Nico's a little high price for my taste on both sites. 277, 330, 399. More a hit tool and stolen base guy. Does give you some correlation. but not really much power. His power is also kind of an outlier, the 8 home runs here. But if I like Friedel, I got to like Nico. It's just a much higher price, $600 more. Like, these guys are essentially the same guy. 32 versus 33 on FanDuel is a little bit more the same. But I don't love Nico at 48 on the DK slate. But I do think he's a must in stacks of Cubs. You definitely want to include a lot of that spot in the lineup. Mike Tauchman, I wrote a lot about him today. I wanted to give him a hand for being as good as he's been. 229 plate appearances, 6 home runs, 4 steals, 122 WRC plus, getting on at a 373 clip, justifying his existence in that leadoff spot. 20.5% strikeouts, 12.7% walks, playing elite defense for them in the outfield. I'm coming around. Capable lefty bat. Maybe he's a little bit better than a quad A player at 32 or whatever he is. Would be weird, but hey, we see weird all the time in baseball. Ian Happ, very strong option for 3,300, 3,200. He's up to 12 home runs all of a sudden, 166 ISO, 120 WRC plus, and an outstanding 378 on base percentage to help correlate with Cody Bellinger, with Dansby Swanson, whose power's kind of coming on a little bit. 16 home runs on the season, was 25 last year, 27 the year before. Major source of power, underrated at shortstop every day. Heimer Candelario's been great in the 2 games for the Cubbies. 16 homers, 225 ISO, 129 WRC plus on the season. Good season for him. He really pulled things together in the last couple months with Washington and now with the Cubs. John Gomes, playable catcher. Nick Madrigal, kind of a mix and match type option. I didn't really talk about Luke Weaver because I am not going to play Luke Weaver. 6,000 on both sites, a 16-point projection in a full complement of innings. 17% strikeouts, 6.8 ERA, a 1.6 whip, a 5.06 xFIP, and a 5.6% home run rate. You guys know what to do, right? We're just leaning into the Cubs bats. We're not going to touch Luke Weaver on the mound. In other spots this season, I have said the words, I think Luke Weaver has a little bit more talent than it looks like he has. This is not one of those spots. I'm not going to Luke Weaver today. I do think that for 62 on DK, you can justify a couple of shares of Jamison Taillon as a dart throw. As an extreme, just value-based dart throw. For 85 on FanDuel, I want no part of it. That is an incorrect price. 20.1% strikeouts, a 5.46 xFIP, ERA, a 4.75 xFIP, 1.37 whip, giving up power, giving up premium contacts, 3.66% home runs, 10.5% barrels. With the Reds projecting well and looking like a team that I'm going to want to get invested in today, I don't think I want to go to Jamison Taillon. They have given strong games to, kind of weakish opposing pitchers recently. 24.9% strikeouts in that lineup. There are strikeouts available for Taillon. He's a 1-in-5 guy. He does have a little bit of upside. That's why I think at 62, you can throw some darts at it. I just think that 85, I think it's so thin for him to pay off 85 on FanDuel, and you're not buying enough for that discount from some of the other pitchers that I like better. So it's a no for me on FanDuel for Taillon. Okay, just okay, not great, not good even for darts on DK. No Luke Weaver. Definitely Reds, definitely Cubbies. You could call that either way. I have it Reds, Cubs, but you could easily call it Cubs, Reds, and that's how Vegas has it. Fire away with bats on both sides. Mariners, Angels. No lineups yet in this one. Javier is my Dane Dunning of the day, says Chuck Deuces. I definitely think it's a spot where you can succeed. It's a stretch to call him Dane Dunning. That's what I'm actually. That's the only thing I'm balking at. Just because it's a funny thing to apply to a guy who had a 30+% strikeout rate each of the last 2 years. But you're right in terms of this year is only 22 whatever it was percent strikeouts. Like that's Dunning-ish. It's definitely a spot I think people will be more inclined to go to maybe than Dane Dunning. Although Dane Dunning got to a decent handful of ownership shares last night on FanDuel. Stephen Leibowitz says lefties kill Taillon. That's all right. So even more upside for the lefties in that Reds lineup. The Jake Fraleys of the world, the Joey Vottos of the world. Joey Votto, the home run pick, buddy. Gotta love it. Trey says things happen in threes, so the Cubs are dropping 10. 10, law of nature. Trey said you need to be the spokesman for an energy drink. I think he was talking to Poe DJ Stoner for that one. All right. Let's keep on rolling here. So the Mariners and the Angels. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani tops the board. We looked at it at the beginning of the show. It's right there in front of you. Fair price for him on both sites. 11K is very expensive. 10.4 is kind of affordable. I mean, it's hard to say it's cheap, but it's certainly a fair price on FanDuel. Like, I don't think he's overpriced on the FanDuel slate. 32% strikeout rate for him this year, 3.43 ERA, a 3.52 xFIP, a 1.07 WHIP. He's a dominant pitcher when things are going right. He's hit a few bumps. 10.2% walks is too high, but still only a 1.07 WHIP with it, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really burn him, and we know he can punch his way out of trouble. 10.3% barrels is definitely too high, but 86.8 miles an hour of exit velo covers it, 36.5% hard hits, 3.69% home runs, has run into some incidental contacts and barrels on some mistakes, but obviously an elite option on the mound. The Mariners have been feeding strikeouts to opposing pitchers. They do have power through the lineup, so maybe some of these guys get a hold of one, and maybe it ruins the ceiling for Ohtani, but I don't think he even needs an absolute ceiling score. Right? I think a good game from Ohtani is enough to potentially be enough on this slate. A ceiling score, I think, puts it away on this slate, and you're going to just want to have Ohtani. It's a short pitching slate. So I think we have to go to him. But if he's owned 35%, 40% on FanDuel, above 50% on DK, I do think there's justification to undercut just for the purposes of taking some of those shares and dedicating them to that other pool of pitchers who are all going to be owned in single digits. There are some capable pitchers, not the least of which is Brian Wu on the other side of this game. I like this spot for Brian Wu, 7,500, 7,900. He's actually my favorite value pitcher. I really like the opportunity. I know he's hit some bumps in the road, 4.96 ERA, a 4.09 xFIP, 25.8% strikeouts. He had like 6 really good starts in a row, or 5 really good ones and a good appearance over a short total of innings in his second outing. Looking through the recent game log, 5 innings in his most recent start. He was pitching okay, but struck out 0. Diamondbacks hitters, walked 2, allowed 3 runs on 7 hits. But wasn't a disaster in terms of giving up home runs. Gave up 2 home runs in each of the 2 starts prior to that. Struck out 7 Blue Jays, only 4 Twins, too many earned runs. But that was the only 2 real blips after that run of a bunch of good starts. So I like the upside for Wu. He's a very real high-end prospect pitcher. 7.2% walks, 25.8% strikeouts, 12.2% swinging. There's plenty of upside here against the Angels. They're a decent team. There are some good veteran bats, some good power that he's going to have to avoid, and there's obviously the presence of Shohei Ohtani in the lineup, even though we can't play him. So he's got a lot to avoid, but I think he's got enough talent to get through it. So for some shares, for sure, I'll have some. And, I don't think you're going to have to get carried away with shares of Brian Wu to get ahead of the field on him. So I think it's just a good position to occupy on this slate for that cheap price. You can get to a lot of bats for those discounts. I think he's firmly on the SP2 board for 7,500 on DK. I think it just makes sense. That said, you probably want to grab some Angel stacks as a hedge. Luis Rengifo is a weird fit as a leadoff hitter, which we've talked about, but he does have that sneaky power upside. I prefer getting it late in the lineup when people aren't going to it, but I'll take it off the top, particularly with 3-position eligibility on FanDuel. 2,800, very playable part. No Ohtani, but he is in the real lineup, so there's the potential for him to hit a home run and soak up all the upside and take it away from guys like CJ Cron, Moustakas, Hunter Renfroe behind him. But there is also the potential that he just gets walked. He's on first base. CJ Cron hits a home run. Cron gets the RBI points at least. So it's not like Ohtani's can't contribute in some ways, but he can also take away points without being accessible to us. So it sucks with the configuration, but that's every time that Ohtani pitches, and you just deal with it. So it limits the upside for Angel stacks a little bit in my mind, but it doesn't change the opportunity for Wu really. CJ Cron, major power hitter, 4,800, 3,200, righty, 11 home runs and 237 plate appearances, 15.3% barrels, 44.1% hard hits. Good first baseman, good option if you're going to stacks of Angels. Mike Moustakas, another playable veteran option, lefty, 2,900, 2,700, 9 homers and 244, kind of looking Mike Moustakas-ish, in a bit of a surprise. I thought he was going to come back and just be shot, but came back and has been somewhat effective. Hunter Renfroe, 17 homers on the season, down a little bit, but that gives him 77 since the start of the 2021 season. He's a major source of power. Mickey Moniak has had a really good season, 317, 349, 566, 11 homers, 149 WRC+. Grichuk's been basically the same guy, 311, 367, 502, 9 homers and 275 plate appearances. He's a veteran guy. He's the one I trust a little bit more out of the two of them, but I think they make a nice tandem, 51, 33 and 4,000, 3,100. they're just easily playable for power, for decent batting average, decent on-base skills from late in the lineup. Matt Thaiss, playable catcher option for power. Zach Neto, playable as a infield piece, 2,800, 2,900 at shortstop. Decent correlation option back to the top of the lineup. Depending on where these guys hit, they're more or less playable. But it's not great not having Ohtani. Also, obviously, no Trout in the lineup. It's a ding to the Angels in their full form, what they could be. I feel like you can still get a decent price on the Angels in terms of the World Series, considering they're still out of the playoffs. But that's a lineup now that I think could make a run if they landed right, if they get their pitching in order, if Trout comes back in time. There's definitely upside. Got to make it to the show or to the dance first, but if they get there, it could be an interesting playoff team. Mariners side against Ohtani, really limited interest. I do think it makes some sense to maybe grab some low-owned opportunities around some of the power bats, but we know that the upside is with Ohtani. We know that the odds are with Ohtani finding a pretty solid strikeout total against all these very high strikeout guys in this lineup. 25.4% strikeout average for the projected lineup. Most of their key hitters strike out into the high 20s or 30s. Some of their slap hitting options, less so. Some of their correlated scoring and on-base guys, less so. But the power hitters, the guys that score the fantasy points the most, are all really high strikeout guys. So you can get there with Mariners, but you got to land on the right night with Julio, with Eugenio, with Cal Raleigh. Maybe some Ty France and some Dominic Canzone mix in. Canzone, 2,200, 2,400. Was hitting 222, 286, 356 in 49 plate appearances with the D-backs, 75 WRC plus before being acquired. Josh Rojas also possibly in the lineup in that deal. No more Colton Wong probably at the bottom of the lineup. Neither one of those guys has been very good this year, but they're capable enough bats from the left side of the plate. If it's anybody, not Shohei Ohtani caliber on the mound, maybe they become more interesting. But against Ohtani, no real need to go to those guys. Ty France has underperformed all year. Teoscar's good for power, but has been bad in his triple slash, bad for run creation. Mike Ford's overperforming his talent level. 11 homers in 143 plate appearances is odd output. 16.3% barrels, 47.5% hard hits. Very, very good output, but not something that would continue over a full season by any means. Speaking of guys like that, Luke Voit no longer in the New York Mets organization. Apparently he opted out of his AAA Syracuse Mets contract today. Where will you go now, Luke Voit? I think the answer is probably South Korea or Japan. And probably South Korea. I don't know that he's an NPB caliber bat either. So this one is significant interest in Shohei Ohtani. Obviously, do what you will with it as far as the public ownership goes. He's going to be the most popular player on both sites. I think on the mound or among hitters. I think he's just the most popular option overall. So you either go with that, you go over that, you undercut it based on how you approach things. I am going to probably be under the field on Ohtani while still having quite a bit of them. I think it creates opportunities that people who go over the top, go to the public level of ownership, pay a ton for them, don't necessarily get to. So I'd rather cover those opportunities than be in the same spots trying to differentiate lineups with bad hitters on all those same Ohtani shares. I'll do that on 2/3 as many Ohtani shares for sure. But I'd rather take that additional third of the Ohtani shares and dedicate it towards some Brian Wu lineups where I'm buying into the better bats, the better positions. So just different ways of approaching the slate, but riding with Shohei Ohtani, never a bad option. Seattle Mariners, minor interest in their bats as a contrarian hedge position around the power guys. Brian Wu, definite yes. Minor interest in the Angels. They're like a lower mid option. Where do they rank on the board? 7th on the board by projected fantasy points. 4th for home runs despite no Ohtani, which is kind of interesting. But it's a lot of guys in like the 8s, some 5s, some 8s, some 6s. Light hitting day. Not a lot of 10s on the board for home runs today. The whole home run board right here. Topped by Mr. Aaron Judge by a wide margin. This is where I was surprised. Like I said, not seeing the two lefties from the Astros up there. I'm a little surprised still by that, that they're not projected better against Clark Schmidt in Yankee Stadium. But really, only these guys above the magic number for home run upside. A lot of guys through this mid-range of like 7s, 8s. So kind of an average day for power with a high peak, obviously. Mr. Judge. He's so good. Joey Votto, number 3 on the board. He was the home run pick for the day. Can't go with Judge. I probably like 2 or 3 times. I think the day he came back from the injury, I used him as the home run pick. I use him very, very sparingly. Because then it just gets into like, he's a homer. He's just picking the best guy in baseball every time. Like, want to make the picks interesting. Want to give you guys some value for the picks. Not always just going with the top guy on the board. I think about the pick. Especially when it's my guy every single goddamn day. So yeah, we talked this one through. Ohtani, Woo. Some Angels, some Mariners, but lower priorities. Last game of the day. Flying by. Podegen says, nice getting an afternoon thunderstorm, perfect getting baked weather. I do like a good thunderstorm. Chuck says Luke Voigt is Terry's arch nemesis. All right. One day there's going to be a knock on my door. It's going to be like Elvis Andrews, Luke Voigt. Who else? Aaron Hicks will probably be like driving and waiting in the car. I'll be like, nah, he said some okay stuff about me afterwards, so I won't kick his ass, but I'll drive you guys there. It's going to be ugly. Hopefully none of those guys watch the show. Or hopefully they do. Like, I would love to find out that, like, and I know this isn't the case. We're watched by like 200 people who are all just a bunch of DFS nerds. Profar, that's the other one. But it would be awesome to find out, like, yeah, somehow that got out to Jurickson Profar, and they were watching you in the Rockies clubhouse bash him, and then he went out and, like, hit 2 home runs and kicked your ass. Rooker, it's another good one. Ref Snyder will be there for sure. Tauchman, yeah, I gave him some roses today, like you said. It's amazing how many of these guys are former Yankees. Like Hicks, Ref Snyder, Tauchman, Luke Voigt, all those guys former Yankees. Anyway. So Julio Urias, we've talked about him a bunch of times through the show. 9,800, 8,800 on FanDuel. The 8,800 on FanDuel is so appealing. Great projection. He projects right alongside Shohei Ohtani on this slate. 81 and a third over 15 starts, 22.6% strikeout rate, 5.6% walk rate, only allowing 32% hard hits. Couple incidental home runs here, obviously. 4.69% home runs is high. 4.98 ERA is fairly high. 4.38 xFIP is a little high. Podegen Stoner's a little high too. 8.7% barrel rate, 86.8% miles an hour. I don't really worry about the contact profile with Urias all that much. He's a fly ball oriented pitcher, so when he makes mistakes, they tend to be a little bit loud. They tend to go over the wall. He's just made a few too many in what is still a fairly short sample. 81 and a third innings, 15 starts. Not a ton of innings to work with there. So I think going up against the lousy Athletics, there's plenty of upside to believe in here for Urias. Doesn't typically pitch deep into ball games, but he's pitched the 6th. Completed the 6th inning in 8 of 15 outings this year. So he's actually been fairly reliable getting through 6. He worked in the 7th just twice, but he made it through 7 innings those 2 times. And he came out after 5 to 5 2/3 innings 4 times, and that's not including the 2 3-inning starts that he was short started when he came back from injury. So I think in general, he's pitching fairly reliably, chasing that quality start, chasing the win bonus, and he's going up against a team that's just fairly inept. The Athletics have a 85 WRC plus collectively against lefties this season, 24.2% strikeout rate, and a 127 ISO in the split. Basically, all of their best hitters are left-handed outside of Zach Geloff, who was a recent call-up, 68 plate appearances in the show so far. We'll see if he's any good. Esteury Ruiz projected back in the lineup. Not really a good hitter, at least over the 369 plate appearances where we saw him, 257, 310. Needs to do more in terms of reaching first base, but obviously has that blazing speed, 43 stolen bases in that sample. We were talking about, wouldn't it be fun if he chased 100 for the season in a full season? Then has been out. So he's not going to get to 100, but 50 plus is obviously still in play. So he's an exciting addition back to the top of the lineup, but really inconsistent, doesn't contribute a lot outside of the stolen bases and needs to get to first base to do it. Geloff, 4 home runs, 5 stolen bases in 68. That's great output for the rookie. We'll see how he continues, but he's a fairly highly regarded guy. 4,500, 3,500, affordable. Second base on DK, third base on FanDuel. Rooker in the projected lineup. We don't have this still, right? Still don't have it. Rooker in the projected lineup does have a 9.8 in the home run model, so the highest ranked guy on their team. One of the higher guys on the day, right? That's, 6th, 7th overall? So it's a good position for Rooker. It's not based on, hey, he was super good for couple of weeks in April, and that's where most of his home runs came from. It's just based on the profile that this player's had. So I kind of believe in the home run upside there. If somebody gets Urias, it wouldn't surprise me if it's Rooker for his 19th of the season. But overall, he's a low-end guy, 31.6% strikeouts, 18 homers in 345 plate appearances, most of which came before May 1st. Jordan Diaz, 2,600, 2,400, playable part from the right side, first base, third base on DK. Good positional flexibility for a cheap price, 250, 299, 426, 4% better than an average creating runs, but not exactly a high-end guy. 49% hard hits is pretty good in the small sample, 147 plate appearances. Ramon Laureano is a guy we know can go like double-digit homers, double-digit steals, but very inconsistent player, kind of a lower-end veteran. Shea Langoliers, lower-end veteran catcher with a little bit of power from the right side. 11 homers in 341 plate appearances. Aledmys Diaz, JJ Bleday, Nick Allen from the bottom. So the lineup doesn't even include like Tyler Soderstrom or the other premium rookies because they're left-handed. I do think there's an opportunity for some of those guys to get into the lineup. Like, it wouldn't shock me to see them give Soderstrom a shot despite the lefty-lefty. Like, you want to give the kids opportunities to grow as hitters. So you don't want to hide them completely if you got them up here for development purposes. But the A's do tend to lean into some of the righty-lefty with a lot of these lineups. So we'll see. But regardless of what comes out, it's still a pretty low-end A's lineup against a pitcher that is projecting really well that I want to get invested in. So very limited interest in the A's. Tons of interest in Urias. On the other side, JP Sears at 6,800 on DK. Arguably is in that same bucket. Like, if you go to Tyon shares, I guess you can go to JP Sears shares. I do think that he's a more talented guy than some of the other discount options, but he doesn't project very well. He's got a brutal matchup against the Dodgers. He's been giving up a ton of power this season. But like, if we're looking at the overall board, I definitely think he's better than these two guys in terms of talent. He's better than these two guys now in terms of talent. He's probably or maybe around Clark Schmidt's level, maybe a little bit worse, maybe a little bit better. But like, in a different matchup, he's at least as good an option as these guys. It's just a really tough matchup for JP Sears here. So I don't really like the spot for him, but that's the justification for including him at 68 on DK. At 82 on FanDuel, I don't think he belongs in the player pool against the Dodgers here. He would have to, he would have to have a really outstanding start to pay that price off against the Dodgers. I'd be really surprised. They're just so good at limiting strikeouts. Top four hitters in the projected lineup, 16.7% strikeout rate across Mookie, Freddie, Will, and Ahmed Rosario now. That's just dynamite to start the lineup out. It's just a tough spot for Sears. 22.3% strikeouts is good. He's been very good keeping people off the base pass. 5.3% walk rate, only a 1.05 whip, but sitting at a 4.09 ERA and a 5.0 xFIP. And 12.3% barrels and 5.26% home runs. That's really your problem. Going up against these Dodgers with low strikeouts and all their power, it just doesn't align well in my mind. So I don't know that I want to target Dodgers here. It's a team that I feel like I say that a lot. I just don't know if I want to target Dodgers here. Thinking back, how many times has that burnt us over the last couple of weeks, couple of months that we've been talking about this stuff? I don't think we've gotten totally killed by just avoiding the Dodgers with value pitching. So I don't think I'm going to go to that much JP Sears. Maybe a couple darts on DK if you want to do it, but it's very low end. Dodgers bats are definitely in play. Second highest overall run total on the board. It was at 5.4, 5.5. So second highest overall run total and second highest by a pretty wide margin. Next highest run total after them looks like 4.5 or 4.6. So that's a pretty big gap between them and the Cubbies and everybody else. Cubbies on top at 5.6. So we're going to the Dodgers. I think, the everyday lineup is basically playable in essentially any configuration. Enrique Hernandez and Miguel Rojas at the bottom of the lineup are kind of lowish end guys, but at least they both have multi-position on FanDuel. Enrique Hernandez gives you multi-position on DK for 3,100. He's a playable veteran. He's having a down season, 226, 279, 325, a 62 WRC plus. Played his way out of Boston. Last year, 222, 291, 338, 75 WRC plus. Hasn't been good since 2021. That year, 250, 337, 449, 10% better than average creating runs, 20 homers, a 199 ISO in a nice season. But really, a career utility man, more of a replacement level player, but does slot into a bunch of positions, cheap pricing, adds flexibility to the Dodgers, if nothing else. You also get Chris Taylor with multi-position on both sites for cheap prices. Tons of power as a righty against the lefty. That's behind Max Muncy, all his pop. Ahmed Rosario. Struggling season for Rosario, but 269, 310, 379. At least the batting average is kind of there. 310 needs to get on base a little bit more. But I think there's upside for him in the heart of this Dodgers lineup or wherever he hits in the Dodgers lineup now. Not feeling pressure of needing to be one of the major contributors to the team, just needs to play some good defense in the infield, get the occasional hit for this team. So I think that might give him a little bit of room to start creating runs again, start maybe hitting for power, or at least getting on and stealing bases. And he's very, very cheap, 3,900, 2,900 in the infield. He's easy to get to in stacks of this team. Will Smith's a star, Freddie Freeman's a superstar, Mookie Betts is a super duper star. It just goes up. Mookie at 2 positions on DK for 62, 3 positions for 44 on FanDuel. Just pay it. Happy to go there. Freddie Freeman, MVP, arguably, in the National League. I know there's some other extremely good players in the National League on excellent ball clubs. Probably going to be Ronald Acuna if you had to award it today. But Freddie's right there. 333, 416, 586, a 169 WRC plus, a 248 ISO, 21 homers. Doesn't strike out, walks a ton, barrels the ball a ton. He's just great. 6,400, 4,300, totally justifiable at first base. So Dodgers top to bottom. Julio Urias at the top, followed immediately by Dodgers top to bottom in whatever configuration of the lineup rolls out, whatever configuration of it you can afford against JP Sears here. No real love for JP Sears, no real love for athletic stacks. I think you can hedge an Urias position with a few athletic stacks. I'd be looking at Zach Geloff, Brent Rooker, and then probably maybe Ruiz if he's at the top of the lineup like this. If he's hitting at the bottom of the lineup, I don't even really like that play. So like Geloff, Rooker, then I'm probably hoping that they pop one of the lefties into the lineup. Like give me Seth Brown or somebody like that even. Like even if it's the veterans rather than the rookies, like I need something better than Jordan Diaz, Ramon Laureano, Shea Langoliers to work with here. Any one of those guys could contribute, give you a little something, but it's a really low-end stack today. JP Sears also really thin. Possible value dart, but really thin. Acuna, Freddie, and Corbin Carroll. Yeah, I think it's really Acuna and Freddie. Carroll will win the Rookie of the Year. Yeah, he's come down a lot in terms of the power. He's still getting on and stealing bases and stuff, but they've also cooled over the last month or 3 weeks or so as a unit, as a team. So they've just kind of come down and just the superstar guys are going to be the two to wrestle for it. Anywho, guys, good stuff. That's the 6-gamer top to bottom. We'll take another quick look at the pitching board here. Only 5:39. So much time to build lineups. I don't know what to do with myself. Scrolling over to the pitching slate. So it's Ohtani and Urias with a bullet at the top of the board. Obviously a major discount for Urias on the FanDuel slate. Those guys project side by side. I wouldn't argue with any of the sites that have Ohtani out for it by a few more points ahead of where I have him. But just I was content with where my model had him in terms of the innings. I think it accounts for some of the hiccups that he's experienced. Maybe he runs into a home run against the hard-hitting Mariners, but there's tons and tons of strikeouts there for Shohei Ohtani on the right night. So major upside for Ohtani. Urias is too cheap on both sides. Major upside for him going up against the inept Athletics. And then we get into a lot of question marks, a lot of up and down opportunities. Good pitchers against tough teams, or like questionable pitchers against shakier teams. Like Mitch Keller against the Brewers should be a strong option here. That said, it's Mitch Keller against the Brewers. It's Mitch Keller. There's capable bats on the Brewers side, and it's Mitch Keller. So that's a shaky spot, but I do think it's the next most worthwhile spot to pay for. I like it better as it projects better than like Sonny Gray against the Cards. But I do like Brian Wu a lot given the price discount here. So do I like Brian Wu for the 7,900 price and the ability to, maybe he coughs up a couple of runs but still hands a handful of strikeouts, and Keller doesn't have a great game and these things even out and I win it with the price discount? I think I'm more likely to go to more shares of Wu than I am Keller just because of the pricing. Less proven starter, definitely an equally tough spot. The Brewers are not good. The Angels do have good hitters in that lineup. So there's capable bats in the Brewers lineup, like I said, but they're not what I would call a good lineup. They've underperformed on the season. Call it a tie. Call it a tie between these three guys. Sonny Gray against the Cards, there's definite upside there. He could find some good strikeouts. No Nolan Arenado in that lineup was a bit of an uptick, so maybe Sonny climbs a little bit in my esteem versus these guys. Javier and Schmidt kind of rank out. The Yankee Stadium of it factors in. Pretty warm night in the Bronx. Ball's probably going to travel a little bit. We saw the massive home run upside for some of those Yankees against Javier. Surprised not to see it for the Astros as much in the model against Clark Schmidt, but I do think it's there. Like whether or not the model's showing it, I do think that Alvarez and Tucker have some pretty high-end, if nothing else, home run upside, targeting that short porch as left-handed hitters against Clark Schmidt. And then the bottom of the board, really thin. Tie on darts for 62 on DK are all right. 85 on FanDuel, I don't think so. Liberatore, no. For me, Sears, no. Hauser, no. Weaver, no. So really the cut line is like here. And it's really fairly tepid interest in Clark Schmidt, honestly. I feel like the Astros are going to get to him just in my gut. He projects okay enough, so I will go there. But just knowing the pitcher a little bit, maybe I'm injecting some bias into here. But just numbers-wise, given the power that he gives up, given the limited strikeouts, given the way that Boone manages him, certainly against a team that could easily have a couple runners on in the fifth inning, and then all of a sudden Boone gives him the early hook. The price is right, so it's okay to do. But out of those top options, he's the one I trust the least. So I don't love the spot for Clark Schmidt. Shannon says, pretty sure your model is wearing a Yankees hat. I'll take that as a compliment to say that you think that this is model worthy. Yeah, right. Kim is super plus defensively. Kim, what's his face from San Diego? Acuna is MVP in a landslide just like Ohtani in the AL. I think Ohtani runs away with it in the AL. Would have been fun if he had gotten traded mid-season to the National League to see if he could win it in both leagues. There's a little bit of chatter about that. All right, guys. So I think that's the up and down of it all. A lot of interesting combinations to put together for sure. There's a lot of interesting players at cheap prices. A lot of good bats today. I think it's definitely going to be one. Ha-Sung Kim. Thank you, Chuck. For some reason, his first name or his last name, whichever one that is, was not in my head when I read the word Kim. I was like, wait, why isn't that popping into my brain? Player that I've been talking about for the last 4 years, going back to his time in the Korean League. Anyway, all right, guys. That's about it. Somebody go out there and win something tonight. Let's get another great screenshot to share with the world. Let's get something to brag about. Somebody go make some money. All of you guys go make some money. But one of you guys go out there and win a ton of money. Go get them tonight. Good luck out there, guys. I'm going to punch out and go build some lineups. I'll see you.